Louie, you got any questions?
Yes, I do, as a matter of fact. Joe, if you could jam with anybody, who would it be? Oh, that was a horrible pour.
You're a bartender, right?
It's my first day. I remember my first pour.
Welcome to episode 3 of FretboardTV. We've got my good friend over here, Joe Sierra, and co-founder of Fretboard Brewing Company, and my good buddy Louie, who is also a bartender here part-time. And my name is Jim Klosterman, a.k.a. Dr. Skinny. So it's good to be here again, and want to welcome everybody to FretboardTV once again. So I'm going to start off with Louie over here. I want you to introduce yourself and what you do and what you like, and then I'll get to Joe here.
Like I said, my name is Louie. I'm a bartender here at Fretboard. Have been since the opening. I love it here. I'm a dad of twins. They're almost 2. They drive me to drink a lot of Fretboard beer. I just, love music, love beer, so this is the perfect place for me.
Mr. Sierra, good friends for a long time. He's my yin to my yang and my yang to my yin. I don't even know what that means.
I don't either, but it sounds marvelous.
So introduce yourself, Joe. What do you do for the company?
Oh, a lot of things, as we all do, right? So with the exception of HR, which you get to put up with,
it's awesome.
I do the rest of the unfun stuff. Not really into titles around here, so not going to title myself, but a chief bean counter, finances, and as well as in charge of sales, and then kind of the vision and direction and things of that nature. So, and drummer, right?
And the drummer, yeah. So our unofficial titles is Joe is the drummer and I'm lead guitar, but that's because we shared the same band for 10 years. So we'll go back to episode 1 with Only Everything. Yes, go check out the video on YouTube, Only Everything. The video is called Change.
All we need is an Andy McLeese reference, and we're good, right?
Let's just talk about until we have Andy on. We're just going to keep talking about him.
Kind of my history is I grew up not where Jim and a lot of my core friends, we all ended up in the White Oak area. I grew up in Harrison, Ohio, and I went to grade school through 7th grade down there, and then I moved to Charlotte, North Carolina. I moved back to this area in 93, which was your senior year, my junior year.
Okay.
And I did not plug back into like the Harrison scene. I created a whole new network of friends. So I've known Jim since 93. So what's that, 27 years?
That's a long
We've been
time.
Putting up with each other's shit.
That's a long time. It's all good.
Yeah, absolutely.
We're still here together.
Yes, very much so. So
I just want to mention something about Joe that struck me when I met Joe was his drumming skills. So Joe will be the first one to say that he's, he'll minimize his drumming skills and say, "Oh, I'm not the best drummer in the world," but Joe is truly the most musical drummer in the world. and his
world might be strong.
All right, well, at least in my world. And his foot is one of the best. So let's talk about John Bonham. I'm just going to jump right into it.
You're going right there.
Let's go. I'm ready.
He's my hero, right? So I started drumming for 2 reasons. My cousin Sean, I can remember being 7 and 8 years old and going over Sean's house and playing on his drum set. He was a drummer, still plays today. And at the time, Sean was really into Led Zeppelin and kind of turned me on to Led Zeppelin. And I immediately fell in love with John Bonham and his drumming style and the fast foot. More of a fast foot heavy player than a finesse, I would call it, right? And I poured myself into Zeppelin for probably the next 15 to 20 years, and that's what I molded my playing style around. And obviously I had other influences coming in, but Zeppelin is at the absolute core of who I am as a musician.
And Louie may not realize it, but he's a fantastic guitar player too.
I've witnessed. So Joe, what was the moment that really made Fretboard a reality for you guys?
I think the trigger point from it going as just conceptual BS and Jim and I trying to figure out how to get out of our worlds of IT into actually doing it something serious was actually a life-changing event. It was the passing of my brother. So, I've always operated kind of in this notion of going back to accounting, right? I treat myself and my spirituality as kind of like a bank account. And I want to have more credits and more deposits going in than debits and stuff flowing out. And IT didn't give that balance, right? So
Yeah.
I was kind of running spiritually at a negative. And so I knew I wanted to get into something that was music and more fulfilling and beer, things of that nature. So Jim and I think Jim's of the same mentality, right? Music fills the wells and IT was sucking them dry, right? So we knew we needed to do something to make sure that, overall we were happy. We were getting more credits than debits. And so we started to try and figure it out. And then my brother passed, and that really kind of put it on its trajectory of let's do this seriously. So at the time, we had been working with Brad, our other business partner, who's episode 2, if you haven't caught it. We had been working with Brad on some recipe development. And when my brother passed, there were some financial hardships for the family. I thank the guys down at Rheingeist. We met with Jim Matt and Bryant Golding, and they took one of our recipes, and we were able to brew one of our recipes and use that as a donation vehicle back to the family to help with bills and things of that nature. And so I think it was at that moment that I realized that there was validity. And I mean, I had all the faith that the beers were tasting good, but when we sat down and tasted and those guys loved it and we knew we could get it off the ground and the beer sold well, I was like, yeah, we got to do this.
What's been the best part about opening the brewery so far for you? I mean, we've got many years to come, but so far.
Honestly, just seeing friends every day, right? I think it's, for me, it's different because, the previous 38 years, I would have a job and I would make friends at work, right? But this is where we made a job with our friends. And so it's completely the opposite, right? And I think that's awesome. And I think with that gives us the ability to really push back on one another. And Jim can tell me when I'm being an asshole, and I can tell him when he's being an asshole. And it's because of those relationships where we're just like, man, we just need to pick up on this a couple days from now and we'll be good, right?
It's usually not that tame, though, when we say that to each other. But yeah, we can talk. Let's talk about Mellowship. Let's do that. So, Joe, you picked Mellowship today.
I did. Mellowship is my favorite product that this brewery makes. And for a couple of reasons. For me, it checks all the boxes. It doesn't really stand out what it is if you're just looking at it. But for me, it's got a couple of things. I grew up drinking Pilsners, Bud Lights, Miller Lights, Coors Lights, just like I think most folks did. So I do like a light, crisp beer. Then I fell in love with hops, and I love IPAs. But I like to drink some quantity, I shall say. And IPAs are a little bit challenging in the quantity category.
They can be some bangers.
So I love this product because it drinks light and crisp like your traditional lagers and pilsners. It is a lager. It is a pilsner. And it's got some hop to it, which gives me the little bit of the IPA feel. And it's only 4.9%, so I can drink them all day.
Louie, do you like the Mellowship?
It's one of my drinkers. I'm not gonna lie.
Is it really? Okay.
When I have a shift beer, it's a lot of time it's either Mellowship or Crazy Train. Actually.
So if we're gonna go beer, if we're gonna talk about beer, let's talk about one more, the Pale Ale.
Yeah.
That is Joe's beer, if I'm not mistaken.
The Pale Ale is absolutely my beer. I think that's the best style. I love IPAs and I love the nose you get from an IPA, but I like the mid 5% Pale Ale. Sierra Nevada was, of course, everybody's gateway to Pale Ales, right? Yep. And to hoppy beers. Had the first Sierra with you about 27 years ago. So love the Pale Ale. One of my favorite beers is from New Glarus. It's their Pale Ale called Moon Man. Absolutely love that beer.
All right, so let's take a break. We're going to check out what's going on this weekend at Fretboard Brewery. And then we're going to get back to all things Joe Sierra when we get back, a.k.a. drummer. See you soon. I would just welcome back to episode 3 of Fretboard TV. We're here with Joe Sierra.
Well, welcome back, everybody, to Fretboard TV. As you can see, there's a giant box of Grippas in front of me. But
delicious.
Delicious. I'm just going to do that one more time.
Is Grippo's going to write us a check for product placement?
We should, or at least give us a couple boxes of free Grippos. I'm just saying.
Grippo.
The finest barbecue
And
chips.
why are we talking about Grippos right
We're
now?
talking about Louie Grippa.
Because we got Grippa here.
That's right.
Just one letter off. But so close.
So close.
But so close.
And if you haven't had a Grippo's chip with a Mellowship,
That's actually, whoa.
ding,
And you just rhymed without even intending to.
game changer.
Can we say, like, look, I'm in Iowa.
The weather is actually coming in this way. And then
It's raining chips. Welcome back, everybody, to Fretboard TV. We're here with Jim and Joe, two of the owners, just hanging out, shooting the shit.
Perfect.
So, Joe, what are some of your fondest musical memories growing up?
Oh, goodness. I can remember being cognizant about music probably around 5 or 6 years old. Mom and Dad's records. We were a Beatles family, not an Elvis family. So
there is a difference, by
yeah,
the way. Big difference.
We were definitely a Beatles family. My mom was a huge Beatles fan. My dad, some of the albums I can remember pulling out. Dad was a big CCR fan. We did a lot of Simon and Garfunkel. A lot of Crosby, Stills, and Nash. Bread. I can remember spinning the Bread album.
Bread.
And so I definitely remember getting into Mom and Dad's albums, which we weren't allowed to do. I remember them going out and us breaking into the record player and playing music, my siblings and I, and having a good time. And then I also vividly remember my dad was a musician as well, but life got in the way of life. And he quit playing when he had kids and career and all of that. But he always had his acoustic guitar under the bed. And again, not allowed to do it. But when Dad was at work, I can remember probably 7 or 8 years old going and getting the acoustic out from under the bed and just kind of fumbling around on the strings.
That's funny. I actually can relate to that a little bit. My dad had an old Gibson Les Paul knockoff. It was like an electric guitar, Starburst design.
Mm-hmm.
And I just remember like getting it out and like looking at it for the longest time and then finally like picking it up and pretending like I was playing, you know. And to this day, I still have that guitar.
Absolutely.
It's a great memory that you just kind of tapped into.
Yeah, very similar. Very similar.
So now all those influences you just talked about, how does that translate? Because I know you and what you listen to later on. How does that translate into you going into, Clutch or any of the other bands? I mean, obviously you still have an influence where you listen to similar style music, but I know that Joe also has listened to a lot of progressive rock and heavier rock too. So
Sure. For me, it was always about rhythm, and I got heavier and heavier because I felt, and I really liked rhythmic rock. And so you mentioned Clutch, and they are just jam band rhythm rock, heavy in your face, and I just couldn't get enough. You know, being a drummer, and I'm all about the backbeat and getting into, just into the groove, and they just did that over and over again. And then that just kind of progressed. It was really a rhythm progression for me. You talk about getting, heavier and heavier, when I listen to Pantera and when I listen to Tool and I listen to all these guys, they are rhythmically just solid to me.
Sure.
And I just gravitated and latched onto that.
Has there ever been an instance where you've been so lost in the rhythm, like playing live with a band, where you've overextended, you're playing
Oh, I do
Because
it
you
all
just,
the time.
oh yeah.
I did it with the Fretboard band when we were playing Find a Little Help from My Friends. And everybody was up on stage and we were all singing and having a good time. I just blew way past the ending and Jim spun around like, we're supposed to end it. I was like, I know, I got it. And then I just screwed the whole ending up.
So that's the funny part. So when you see the guitar player spin around and go, and just give that look like,
yeah, what are you doing?
come on.
I mean,
Killing me, Smalls.
Wally was even able to start a song out in the wrong key and nobody knew, right?
Oh yeah. Wally. So Mike Wally's is brewer here and a fantastic bass player. He starts a song and we just are like,
That's the right key.
I don't think it's the right key. It was in the total wrong key. We're like, hey dude, go up. That's the wrong key. So yeah, it's and nobody cared. You know, that's the funny part. But drummers, it's tough. It's
when
tough
we
being
come
a
off
drummer.
the rails, everybody knows.
Yeah,
That's
for sure.
Yeah, so. Good stuff.
Truly.
Was that an endorsement for Truly?
Truly.
We are now going to do an endorsement for Mellowship right there. Louie, you got any questions?
Yes, I do, as a matter of fact. Joe, if you could jam with anybody, who would it be? Oh, that was a horrible pour.
You're a bartender, right?
It's my first day. I remember my first pour.
It varies on instrument.
Well, I was
so
about to ask.
have
Give me one on guitar and then one on drums for sure, because we've talked about both.
If I could jam with anybody on me playing guitar, this is probably going to surprise you.
Uh-oh.
I would jam with Nick Mason.
Oh, that's cool. That's a cool
Absolutely.
answer for me,
I
who
would
likes Pink Floyd.
Because he is just so solid, so foundationally sound, but he's so open. It's just open spaces, and he doesn't overdo it, and he respects the music, and I just feel like you can do anything on top of what Nick Mason. For drums, if I could play drums with anybody, I would want to jam with Jimmy Page.
Oh.
I would have to.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
Just,
Let's go.
there's no denying that I would have to jam with Jimmy Page. I would feel very inferior knowing that Bonham's my hero and that was his drummer for decades, but I would have to try.
That's awesome.
So
What was your first concert? I don't know if I've ever asked you that.
my first concert was Eric Clapton in '92 at the Charlotte Coliseum.
Actually, I think you did tell me that once.
That's a solid first concert.
That does not suck.
No, it was amazing. I went with my band, and so my first band, I was 13, and all the guys in the band were in their between 18 and 21, and they couldn't find a drummer, and so actually it was my guitar teacher's band. So I was taking guitar lessons from our rhythm guitarist, and they didn't have a drummer, and he knew I played drums, so I went and played drums in their band. My first gig out at a bar playing till 2 a.m. I was 15.
Nice.
I don't know how my parents put up with this shit.
All right, so I had the question in episode 1 about the bands that I would like to see either dead or alive on the stage. So I'm going to ask the same question. On the Fretboard stage, what bands, besides Led Zeppelin, I'm just going to toss that out.
I was going to give you 3.
but
Zeppelin was obviously
Yeah.
one of them, so we could toss them out. I would like to see Clutch and Tool up on stage.
that'd be stupid good.
All right, Joe, we're going to let you answer some viewer questions.
Ooh,
The down and dirty of Joe.
let's do it. That's a great question. Well, for those of you that are not runners, any beer tastes wonderful after a run. And in fact, we ran last night with the Brink running group, my wife and I and a good friend, and we were just talking about there's just something about when you exercise, just a beer tastes marvelous. And I don't even know why. But anyway,
I would agree.
it's definitely a pale ale or IPA. If I can get it, it's always New Glarus Moon Man. Absolutely. I actually have no tattoos in consideration. So the left side of my arm is all music related. It's got the fretboard. It's got Pink Floyd The Wall. It's got the Zeppelin 2 album cover. It's got an Iron Maiden Peace of Mind, and it's got a Tool 10,000 Days. So I am out of left arm, and I have no current initiative to expand the ink anywhere else in my body. So it's not to say that won't change, but right now, nothing's on the agenda.
Currently, the canvas is closed.
That's correct. That's correct. Well, it would have to be the only guy I go to, Carter Gillis down at Dana's North Side. So he's done both arms. Don't let the anxiety of all the little things prohibit progress, right? And I see that even with projects here today at Fretboard. It's very easy to have a concept or an idea and then sit there and think up of 40 reasons why you shouldn't execute or why it's going to be difficult to execute or blah, 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 blah. Bands. I mean, I listen to Ray LaMontagne. I listen to a lot of Asgear, who I've mentioned. I do a ton of Avett Brothers. I love the Avett Brothers, man. They're amazing. And then, more of the hip hop side, the Post Malone, the Imagine Dragons. Love those guys. I don't know. I bounce around. That's why I love music, is because I feel like there's something for the way you're feeling, and sometimes I'm feeling like Pantera, and sometimes I'm feeling like Post Malone, and sometimes I'm feeling like Ray LaMontagne, and so I'm gonna put in whatever I'm feeling like.
Well, cool. Thanks for tuning in. Episode 3, and we appreciate your audience. This is Joe Sierra, also co-founder of Fretboard Brewing Company. Tune in for the next show, which will be broadcast in about a week or so. I think Gus is on the hot seat. Gus is our taproom manager, and will be up next. So if you already haven't, subscribe below, and please leave us a comment. And especially if you got questions for Gus next week, stay tuned.
I'm going to have to come up with a couple questions for Gus. Questions I've had since the beginning.
I like it.
So on behalf of all my partners here, Joe Sierra and Louie Grippa, thanks for joining us, and see you soon.
Cheers.
Cheers.
Drink local beer.